forest was silent, but not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something waiting, something watching. Tall alien trees rose high above. Their glowing branches lit the ground in soft blue light. Shadows moved like living things between the roots, and the air felt heavy. A young human woman, her name was Alara, walked slowly through this strange place, her boots sinking into the soft ground, her scanner humming in her hand. She had traveled far from her landing site, searching for samples, searching for answers about this mysterious planet. Her eyes moved from one glowing plant to another, recording details, trying to understand the world. But deep inside, she felt uneasy, as if every step was being watched by unseen eyes. She tried to shake the feeling away, whispering to herself, "It is just a forest, nothing more." Yet her heart beat faster. Then it happened. Her right foot pressed down on something hidden under the soil. In an instant, long vines shot upward like snakes, wrapping around her leg, pulling tight with brutal force. Alara screamed, her body falling hard onto the glowing moss. The vines were alive, thick, sharp, and cold, digging into her skin. Every time she moved, they tightened more. She tried to pull them off with her hands, but the vines cut her palms, red drops staining the bright moss. Her scream echoed through the forest, but the echo sounded wrong, almost like the forest was swallowing the sound instead of carrying it. No reply came, no human voice answered, only the distant cries of unknown creatures. Her breath grew fast, panic rising. She pressed the buttons on her scanner, hoping for a signal, but the screen only flashed red symbols. Interference detected. The trap was not natural, she realized. The vines glowed faintly, pulsing with strange energy. It was designed, created, built to catch. Alara's heart pounded harder. This Walfo is not an accident of nature. Someone had made this trap, and whoever made it would surely come. She shouted again, her voice breaking. "Help, somebody, please!" Her cry was desperate, but the forest only answered with silence. Pain shot up her leg as the vines grew tighter, almost feeding on her struggle. She tried to stay calm, to think like a scientist, but fear was stronger. Her mind screamed with questions. Who made this trap? What do they want? Am I their prey? Minutes felt like hours, her throat dry from screaming. She leaned back on the moss, sweat running down her face. She thought of her team, still at the base camp miles away. They would not hear her, not in time. Her chest tightened with hopelessness, and still she could not give up. She shouted again, louder, her voice raw. "Is anyone out there, please?" The echo spread out, weaker each time, fading into the endless forest. Her eyes filled with tears. She was alone. But then, something changed. She paused, listening, holding her breath. In the distance, faint but real, there was movement. Not the rustle of animals, not the hum of insects, but heavy steps, steady and deliberate. Her heart leapt with hope and fear together. Was it a rescuer or the maker of the trap? She struggled harder, her body shaking. "Here, I am here," she cried with all the strength left in her. The vines cut deeper, glowing brighter as if they did not want her to escape. Her scream carried across the glowing trees into the darkness, and somewhere far away, someone heard it. A man, human like her, sitting alone in a broken shelter, lifted his head, his eyes narrowed, his ears catching the faint sound that drifted on the wind. He knew that voice, the voice of someone desperate, someone in pain. For a long time, he had avoided people, hiding from war, hiding from memories. But now, hearing the cry, something inside him stirred. He rose slowly, gripping his old weapon, his heart heavy, his mind torn. Was it a real human in need, or was it a trick of the alien hunters? The forest had many dangers, many traps, but the scream had sounded too human, too real. Alara did not know it yet, but her desperate cry had reached the one man who could change everything. As she hung there in the trap, fighting to stay awake, hope flickered weakly inside her. She whispered to herself, "Someone heard me. I know someone heard me." The vines pulled tighter, glowing brighter, the pain almost unbearable. Her body trembled, but her spirit refused to break. The forest watched in silence, the night darker, the danger closer. And far away, the man began to walk, step by step, toward the sound of her voice. The trap had been set, the prey had been caught, but the game was only beginning. Far away from the glowing forest, hidden inside a ruined shelter made of metal and stone, a man sat alone. His name was Kale, once a soldier, once a leader, now only a shadow of who he had been. The fire in front of him burned low, sending sparks into the dark air, and his eyes stared at the flames as if they could answer the questions inside his mind. He had chosen this exile, this lonely corner of the alien world, because he was tired of war, tired of fighting, tired of losing everyone he cared about. Here in silence, he thought he could escape his past, but silence is never complete. On nights like this, the forest whispered, the wind carried strange sounds, and sometimes he thought the planet itself was speaking to him. Most of the time he ignored it, convincing himself it was only his imagination. But tonight was different. Tonight he heard something that froze his blood. It began faint, almost too faint to notice. A sound carried on the wind, a voice, sharp with fear, breaking through the stillness. He lifted his head slowly, his soldier instincts waking inside him. He listened hard, his heart beating faster, and then he heard it again, clearer, a scream, human, desperate, calling for help. Cale stood at once, his old weapon in his hand. The metal felt heavy, familiar. A part of him he had tried to bury. He walked to the edge of the shelter, his eyes scanning the dark forest. The scream echoed again, and this time he was sure it was no trick of the wind, no alien beast, no hallucination. It was a human voice, full of pain and fear. His jaw tightened and his mind argued with his heart. He told himself to stay, to ignore it, to let the forest swallow that voice. He had sworn not to get involved again, not to fight again. Every battle in his past had ended with loss, every mission with blood. He had promised never to carry the weight of another life. But still, the scream cut through all his promises. It was the voice of someone helpless, someone trapped, and Cale knew what it meant to be trapped. He remembered the war, the cages, the endless cries of his comrades who never escaped. He remembered the time when no one came for him, when he had thought he was forgotten. That memory alone was enough to push him forward. He could not let that same fate fall on another human, not while he still breathed. Cale packed quickly, his movements sharp and efficient. He strapped his old armor across his chest, the plates scratched and burned from old battles. He loaded his rifle, checked the blade at his belt, and pulled his hood over his head. Every piece of gear felt like stepping back into a life he had sworn to leave behind, but there was no choice. Not now, not with that scream still echoing in his ears. He stepped out into the alien night. The forest stretched before him like a living maze, glowing plants swaying as if moved by unseen hands. The air was thick, carrying both beauty and danger. Cale moved with care, his boots silent on the soft ground, his eyes sharp. Every sound mattered, every shadow could hide an enemy. He walked and walked. Ked faster, guided by the memory of the voice, each echo pulling him closer. As he moved deeper, his soldier mind calculated. A scream like that did not come from nowhere. It meant a trap, it meant hunters, it meant danger. This forest was known for its tricks, and the alien species here were masters of deception. Sometimes they used machines to mimic voices, to lure prey. Sometimes they set traps that caught more than animals. Cale clenched his weapon tighter, thinking of the possibility. But the scream had carried something real, something he could not explain. It had carried human pain, human fear, and no machine could copy that. He stopped at the edge of a glowing ridge, the wind shifting. There it was again, the voice, raw and broken, but still fighting. His heart beat faster, and he whispered to himself, "Hold on. Whoever you are, I am coming." He picked up his pace, his body moving with the strength of old training. Branches snapped, roots twisted under his boots, but he did not stop. Every second counted, every step mattered. In his mind, the battle between fear and duty raged. One side told him he would walk into another trap, that he would die in this cursed forest, forgotten like the rest. The other side told him he could not ignore the call, that if he turned away, he would never forgive himself. For years he had lived with guilt, with silence, with ghosts. He could not add another to that list, not tonight. The forest grew darker, the glowing trees casting eerie light on his path. Strange creatures moved in the shadows, their eyes following him, but none dared to strike. They knew what he was, a predator of his own kind. Cale kept moving, his breath steady, his rifle ready, his mind sharp. The scream came again, weaker now, fading, and his chest tightened. He knew the person was running out of time. He had to reach them before the forest, before the hunters, before death itself. Step by step he moved closer. The silence of his exile was gone, replaced by the pounding rhythm of a mission. He had tried to leave this life behind, but tonight had dragged him back. He was no longer just Cale the exile. He was Cale the soldier once more, and somewhere ahead, a life waited in the balance. The listener had heard the cry, and he had chosen to answer. The night deepened, the forest grew more dangerous, but Cale kept going, his eyes fixed on the path, his heart fixed on the voice. He whispered once more, "Hold on, I am coming." And the darkness seemed to tremble, as if it knew the hunter had returned. Alara's body trembled as the vines dug deeper into her leg. Every breath came sharp, every movement sent fresh waves of pain. Her hands shook as she tried to pry the vines away, but the harder she pulled, the tighter they grew, like they could sense her weakness. Her skin burned where the sharp edges cut. Glowing symbols ran across the vines as if alive, pulsing with energy that made her blood feel cold. The trap was not just holding her, it was draining her, feeding on her struggle, feeding on her fear. She screamed again, the sound tearing from her throat, but her voice was weaker now. The echo stretched out into the forest, but even as it traveled, she knew it might not reach anyone. Her mind raced with fear, memories of her training, her team, the warnings they had given her about wandering too far alone. She had been stubborn, confident in her scanner, confident in her ability to handle anything, but this trap was beyond science, beyond logic. It was something designed to break the human spirit as much as the human body. She grabbed a broken branch and tried to wedge it under the vines. The branch snapped like glass, shards scattering into the moss. Her hands bled more. Her voice cracked with frustration. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away, refusing to give in completely. She clenched her teeth and whispered to herself, "I will not die like this. Not here." But the forest felt alive, whispering back, the glowing plants swaying as if amused by her suffering. Her scanner still flickered useless red warnings, interference stronger than ever. The more she looked at the symbols on the vines, the more she realized they were not random. They were writing, a language, old and strange. She had studied dozens of alien codes, but this one felt different, darker, like it was made not for communication but for control. It dawned on her that the trap was not just a snare, it was a message. A sign left by something intelligent, something that wanted her caught. The pain spread higher, the vines crawling slowly up her leg, wrapping her waist, each pulse draining her strength. Her vision blurred, her head spun, but she forced herself to keep fighting. She clawed at the vines, ignoring the blood, ignoring the sting. Every second was a battle against her own failing body. She thought of her family far away, her crew at base camp. She thought of Earth and the dream that had brought her across the stars. "I cannot end here," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The forest answered with a low hum, deep and vibrating through the ground. It was not her imagination. The entire ground trembled faintly. Something else was moving, something heavy, something aware of her. She froze, her body shivering, listening through the pain. From the shadows came a pair of glowing eyes, not human, not animal. They watched her struggle with quiet hunger, the way predators watch prey that cannot run. Her scream caught in her throat, fear stronger than before. The trap had not only caught her, it had announced her. She was no longer alone in this forest, and she wished she was. She tried again to break free, ignoring the fire in her leg. She pulled, twisted, slammed her body against the ground. The vines tightened with every effort, sending shocks of pain that made her cry out. Her nails tore, her arms bruised, her voice grew hoarse. Still, she refused to stop. She could not surrender. Even as the alien eyes moved closer, even as the vines drank more of her strength, she fought. Minutes bled into hours in her mind. Though only moments passed, the stars above blurred through the glowing canopy, her vision fading. She whispered again, weak but steady, "Somebody, please." Her voice was almost gone, but her will was not. Deep inside, the spark of survival burned, small but bright. She would fight until her last breath, even if no one came. The eyes in the dark blinked, then vanished. The silence returned, but heavier. She knew they were still out there, watching, waiting for her to weaken further. A cruel patience filled the forest, as if the world itself enjoyed her misery. Alara clenched her fists, her face pale, her breaths shallow, her body sagged against the moss, her strength slipping away. But then, a sound reached her ears, faint but real. Steps, heavy, steady, cutting through the night. Her heart leapt with hope, but fear chased it. Was it her rescuer or the one who had made the trap? She lifted her head weakly, her voice cracking. "Here, I am here." The vines pulsed faster, glowing brighter, sensing something near. Her body shuddered, her pulse raced, the struggle between hope and despair tearing her apart. Her ears strained for the sound again, and yes, it was closer now. A figure moving through the trees, not hiding, not rushing, but coming. Her mind spun with questions. Was this the end, or a new beginning? Would this be her salvation, or her doom? She had fought until her last strength, and now all she could do was wait. Her eyes closed for a moment, whispering once more, "Please." The vines tightened cruelly, but she did not scream this time. Her strength was almost gone, but her spirit clung to the hope that someone, anyone, had heard her. And in the distance, Kale stepped closer, his shadow breaking. The glow of the forest, the listener had become the walker, and the walker was now the answer. Alara's struggle had not been in vain, not yet. The forest held its breath, waiting, watching. The trap was still tight, the danger was still near, but the struggle was no longer hers alone. The forest was alive with whispers. Glowing trees swayed though no wind touched them, and the ground trembled faintly with every sound. Alara hung in the trap, her body weak, her breath shallow, but her eyes stayed fixed on the movement ahead. Through the blur of pain, she saw a figure, dark against the glowing plants, moving closer step by step. Her heart pounded, hope fighting against fear. Was this a rescuer or the hunter who had set the trap? The vines pulsed around her leg, glowing brighter as if sensing the approach, feeding on her panic. She bit her lip to stop another scream, afraid that too much noise might bring even worse things from the shadows. The figure came closer, the outline of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying something heavy across his back. Alara's eyes widened. She could not believe it. Another human, here, in this cursed forest. Her voice broke into the night, weak but full of desperate relief. "Help me, please." Kale froze at the sound, his rifle raised, his sharp eyes studying her from the cover of a glowing tree. He saw the trap first, the glowing vines wrapping her body, pulsing with strange energy. Then he saw her face, pale with fear, but still alive, still fighting. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his soldier instincts warning him. This could be bait. The aliens could have planted her as a lure, but the fear in her eyes was too real, too human. No machine could fake that. He stepped into the open, his boots crunching against the glowing moss. Alara gasped at the sudden sight. A man in battered armor, his face scarred, his eyes burning with caution and memory. She whispered, "You heard me," and her voice cracked with both gratitude and disbelief. Kale did not answer right away. His eyes moved past her, scanning the shadows, and there between the trees, he saw them, not far away, half hidden in the darkness. Several pairs of glowing alien eyes blinked slowly. They were watching, waiting, their shapes moving low and silent, hunters circling their prey. Kale's chest tightened. It was worse than he thought. She was not just caught in a trap, she was being observed. They were testing her, weakening her, preparing for the final strike, and now they were studying him too. Alara saw the change in his expression and whispered, "They are here, aren't they?" Kale nodded once, his voice low and steady. "Yes, and they are waiting for you to break." Her throat tightened, fear returning stronger. "I can't hold much longer," she whispered, the vines glowing brighter around her waist. Kale's jaw clenched. He raised his rifle slowly, aiming into the shadows. The eyes blinked back at him, unafraid, curious, as if deciding whether he was worth their attention. The silence was crushing, broken only by the hum of the trap and Alara's ragged breaths. Kale stepped closer, his rifle steady, his other hand reaching for the blade at his belt. He spoke softly to her. "Stay still. Fighting makes the vines worse." Her lips trembled. "I tried. They only got tighter." "I know," he said. "That is what they want." The hunters shifted in the dark, faint outlines visible now, tall and lean, their bodies blending with the glowing plants. They were patient, far too patient, confident in their trap. Kale knew he had only one chance. He moved closer to Alara, his eyes never leaving the shadows. The aliens did not attack yet, but he felt their tension, ready to strike if he made one wrong move. Alara whispered, "Why are you here?" Her voice weak. Kale's answer was simple. "Because I heard you." The words were heavy, carrying memories. Of all the voices he had not saved before, her eyes filled with tears, not just from pain, but from the strange comfort of those words. Someone had come, against all odds. Someone had answered. He crouched beside her, studying the vines. Strange runes glowed across them, symbols that shifted like living things. Kale frowned. The language was unfamiliar, but the design was clear. This was not nature. This was technology. Alien intelligence had crafted this trap, designed not to kill fast but to capture and weaken. He touched the vines carefully with the tip of his blade. Sparks shot out, and Alara flinched with pain. "Easy," he muttered. "They are connected to your nerves." She bit her lip and nodded, trusting him, because she had no choice. From the shadows, the hunters moved closer, their glowing eyes narrowing. Kale looked up, his rifle snapping toward them. The aliens froze, silent, their bodies swaying like shadows in water. The forest grew colder, the air thicker. The encounter had reached its edge. Kale had to act, or both of them would be lost. He leaned close to Alara, his voice a whisper. "When I cut, the trap will fight back. It will hurt, but you must stay quiet." Her body shook, but she whispered back, "I can try." Kale's blade pressed against the first vine. The hunters shifted, sensing movement, the forest humming louder. Alara closed her eyes, bracing for pain, and Kale, the soldier who had sworn never to fight again, struck his blade against the alien trap. The silence shattered. Sparks flew. Alara screamed. The vines convulsed like living snakes. The glowing eyes in the shadows blinked faster, and the hunters began to move. The encounter had begun. Not just between man and trap, but between human will and alien design. The forest roared alive, and there was no turning back. The blade cut deep into the glowing vines, sparks burst into the air, and the forest lit up with a strange red glow. Alara cried out as the energy surged through her body, pain flashing like fire in her veins. But she held back another scream, remembering Kael's warning. The vines writhed like living snakes, tightening once more, then snapping apart with a crack that shook the ground. Kael pulled her free from the mossy soil, his grip strong, his scarred face focused. For a moment, she thought they were safe, but the shadows around them stirred, and the hunters stepped forward, tall and lean. Their bodies shimmered like liquid light, blending with the trees. Their eyes glowed yellow, unblinking, their movements smooth and silent. They carried long, jagged weapons that pulsed with the same energy as the trap. Alara froze in Kael's arms, fear surging fresh through her weak body. Kael raised his rifle, his voice calm but sharp. "Stay behind me." The first hunter lunged, faster than a human eye could follow. Kael fired once, the blast cutting through the glowing forest, striking the alien in the chest. The creature staggered, its body twisting unnaturally before falling into the moss. But the others did not pause. They moved together, circling like wolves, silent and merciless. Alara gasped. "There are too many," Kael answered without looking back. "Then we fight." The air exploded with motion, the hunters striking from every side. Kael spun, his blade flashing, his rifle thundering. Each shot lit the forest in white light. Each swing of his blade tore through the vines and alien flesh. The hunters hissed in strange voices, not screams of pain, but signals to one another. They moved like one mind, one swarm, each attack forcing Kael to defend faster and faster. Alara stumbled back, her leg weak but free. She grabbed a sharp branch from the ground, clutching it with trembling hands. Her scientist mind told her she was no fighter, but her human spirit refused to stand idle. When one hunter rushed past Kael toward her, she thrust the branch forward with all her strength. The jagged wood pierced the alien's side, glowing blood splashing. Across the moss, the hunter screeched, twisting violently before collapsing. Alara gasped in shock, her hands shaking, but inside her a spark of courage burned brighter. Kael fought like a man who had lived for nothing but this moment. His body moved with the speed of old training, each shot precise, each strike brutal, but the hunters kept coming, endless shapes slipping from the trees. One slashed across his arm, burning pain seared through him. Another leapt from behind, its weapon raised. Kael rolled, firing upward, the blast tearing the alien apart in midair. He rose quickly, breathing hard, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. His eyes burned with fury, his body screaming with pain, but he did not stop. The forest itself seemed to roar, the glowing plants shaking with every shot. The hunters hissed louder, their eyes glowing brighter, as if calling more from the distance. Kael knew they could not fight forever. He shouted to Alara, "We must move now!" She limped forward, clutching the broken branch, her eyes wide but determined. Kael cut through another attacker, clearing the path. He pulled her close and pushed forward through the glowing trees. Behind them, the hunters followed, silent shadows slipping through the forest. Every step was a race, every breath a battle. Kael fired behind him, blasts lighting the night, slowing the creatures but not stopping them. Alara stumbled, but Kael caught her, dragging her onward. Her leg burned, her strength fading again, but her will kept her moving. "I cannot," she gasped, but Kael's voice cut sharp. "You can. We are not done yet." They reached a narrow ravine, the ground dropping sharply, glowing vines hanging like curtains across the edge. Kael grabbed Alara and leapt down, sliding across the rocks. The hunters stopped above, their glowing eyes staring down, waiting. Kael raised his rifle, firing into the vines above. The energy blast shook the forest, and the hanging plants fell like a burning curtain, blocking the path. The hunters hissed in anger, but for a moment, they did not fall. Alara collapsed against the rocks, gasping, her body trembling. Kael stood guard, his rifle ready, his chest heaving. His armor was cracked, his arm bleeding, his face shadowed with exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp, unbroken. He looked down at her, his voice low. "You fought. You did not give in." She met his gaze, tears in her eyes. "I thought no one would come." Kael's face hardened, his words heavy. "I almost didn't, but I could not stay away." Above them, the forest stirred again, more glowing eyes blinking in the distance. The battle was not over. It had only begun. Alara clenched her fists, her fear slowly turning into resolve. Kael tightened his grip on his rifle, ready for whatever came next. The forest whispered, the night trembled, the hunters prepared their next move. But the humans were not prey anymore. They were survivors, and together, they would fight again. The ravine was quiet for a moment. Only the sound of Alara's breathing filled the air. She leaned against the cold rock, her body shaking, her legs still burning where the vines had cut deep. Kale stood close, his weapon raised, his eyes scanning the top of the ridge where the hunters had vanished into shadow. The forest above whispered with strange voices, the glowing eyes watching from a distance, waiting for their chance. Kale turned back to Alara, his voice steady but low. "We cannot stay here. They will find another way down." Alara nodded weakly, her hand pressing against her wound. "Where do we go?" Kale pointed deeper into the ravine, where glowing water streamed through jagged rocks. "The current leads to the outer cliffs. It is dangerous, but safer than staying here." He pulled her up, his grip firm, his strength carrying her weight when her body failed. Step by step, they moved along the stream, the sound of rushing water masking their movements. Alara's breaths came shallow, but her eyes stayed alert, her mind racing with everything she had seen, the trap, the symbols, the hunters. None of it was random, none of it was natural. She whispered, half to herself, half to Kale, "They are not just hunters. This was designed for humans. Only humans." Kale glanced at her, his face grim. "I know." His voice carried no surprise, only the weight of someone who had already seen too much. They pushed onward until they reached a hollow beneath the rocks. Kale led her inside, a hidden place shielded from the glowing forest. He set her down carefully and knelt to check her wound. The vines had left deep cuts, glowing faintly as if the energy still lingered. Alara winced, but forced herself to stay calm. "It feels cold, like it is still inside me." Kale frowned, touching the edge of the wound with a cloth. "It is not poison. It is power. They drain and mark their prey." Alara's eyes widened, her mind catching the meaning. "Mark, as in track." Kale nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "Yes, they will follow you, wherever you go." Her breath caught, fear rising again. "Then there is no escape." Kale's eyes burned with resolve. "There is always escape, but you must know the truth first." He sat back, his rifle across his knees, his voice low but sharp. "These hunters are not beasts. They are not mindless predators. They are soldiers, scouts for something greater." Ilara's body stiffened, her mind spinning. Scouts for what? Kale's gaze turned hard, as if he had carried the secret for years. "For invasion," he said, the word heavy in the dark hollow. Ilara's heart raced. "You mean, they are preparing for war?" Kale nodded. "Yes, their traps weaken us, their marks track us, they study how long we survive, how much pain we can take. We are experiments to them." Her throat tightened. "Then my mission, my research, I was never just exploring, I was walking into their design." Kale's voice softened, but carried no comfort. "They wanted you here. The trap was no accident. You were chosen." She shook her head, refusing to accept. "But why me? Why humans at all?" Kyle leaned closer, his eyes sharp with truth. "Because humans fight harder than any species they have faced. They test us because they fear us." Alara blinked, her tears mixing with anger. "So they try to break us before the war begins." Kale nodded, his voice like iron. "Exactly, but they do not understand. They see fear. They see pain, but they cannot see the strength underneath. They cannot see what happens when humans stand together." Alara looked at him, her fear slowly hardening into resolve. Her body was weak, her leg torn, but her spirit grew stronger with every word. She whispered, "Then we must warn the others, the team at the base, the ships, Earth." Kale shook his head, his face grim. "The base is already compromised. The moment they hear of your capture, they will strike there too." Her heart sank. "Then where do we go?" Kale's eyes turned to the distance, past the hollow walls. "We go to their source, the place where the traps come from, the heart of this forest." Alara's breath caught. "The alien base." Kale nodded once. "Yes, I have seen glimpses, far beyond the cliffs, hidden under the glowing roots. A fortress disguised as part of the forest." She whispered. "And you want to walk into it?" Kale's eyes narrowed, his voice steady. "If we do not, no one will ever know the truth, and no one will survive the war that follows." The forest outside stirred again, faint hissing voices echoing in the night. Alara reached for her scanner, broken and flickering, but still recording faint signals from the vines. She pressed her palm against her wound, wincing as the energy flared. "If I can decode these symbols, I might know more about their design, maybe even their weakness." Kale nodded, his eyes steady on her. "Then we fight with knowledge as well as weapons." She looked at him, the man who had come when no one else could, her voice soft. "Why did you save me when you could have walked away?" Kale's jaw tightened, his eyes shadowed with old pain. "Because once, no one came for me, and I swore if I ever heard that cry again, I would not turn away." Alara's throat tightened, her chest heavy with gratitude. "Then we are not alone anymore." Kale gave the faintest nod. "No, not anymore." The night deepened. the forest glowing brighter as the hunters gathered again, their voices drifting through the trees. Alara leaned back against the stone, her scanner humming softly, her eyes burning with determination. Kale stood guard, his weapon ready, his body still strong though covered with wounds. They were two against an army, but they carried something the hunters did not: the will to survive, the will to fight, the will to prove that humans could never be broken. And beyond the cliffs, deep in the forest, the alien fortress waited. Its lights pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and cold. The truth had been revealed, but the hardest path was still ahead. The escape was only the beginning. The war was coming. The forest stretched endless before them, glowing roots twisting like rivers of light through the ground, the night alive with strange whispers. Alara leaned against Kael as they moved, her body weak but her spirit burning stronger with every step. Her scanner flickered in her hand, the broken screen glowing faintly, showing pulses of energy deeper in the forest. She whispered, "There, the signal is strongest. The source is ahead." Kael nodded, his jaw set, his eyes sharp, every sense alert. They followed the stream until the trees grew taller, their roots curling into massive arches. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with a low hum that made the ground shake beneath their feet. Kael slowed, his hand raised, signaling silence. Alara froze beside him, her breath caught, her eyes wide. Through the tangled roots, a glow unlike any other spread across the horizon. Not the soft light of plants, but a harsh artificial glow, steady and controlled. They climbed the ridge slowly, Kael's weapon ready, Alara clutching her scanner tight. At the top, they looked down into a hidden valley. Alara gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Beneath them stretched a fortress, half hidden beneath glowing roots, massive towers rising like dark spires. The walls shimmered with alien energy, pulsing like veins of fire through the ground. At the center stood cages, dozens of them, each glowing with the same runes that had bound her. And inside, shapes moved, shapes of humans, trapped and broken. Alara's heart pounded. No, it cannot be. Her voice cracked with horror. Kael's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. I warned you, you were not the first, and you will not be the last. The cages glowed, filled with screams that could not escape the energy walls. Some prisoners sat silent, their bodies thin, their spirits crushed. Others fought against the walls, their fists bloody from striking the glowing barriers. Alara's throat tightened, her mind screaming with rage. They are capturing us, studying us, testing how long we last. Kael nodded grimly. Every trap feeds into this place. Every scream brings them closer to their victory. Alara's eyes filled with tears, not of weakness but of fury. She whispered, "This is not hunting, this is war." Kael's voice was steady but carried a fire. Yes, and this is only the beginning. The fortress roared with movement. Alien figures walked the cages, their tall frames glowing with strange armor. They carried weapons pulsing with red light, their voices hissing commands in a language Alara could not understand. But she did not need translation. She could see the cruelty in their eyes, the way they treated humans like animals. Her hands clenched tight around the scanner, her knuckles white. She whispered, "I cannot let this be hidden. The universe must know." Kael placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice low. "Then we must survive long enough to tell them." Her eyes met his, and she nodded. "We will." But as she spoke, the scanner beeped, louder than before. Kael froze, his eyes snapping to the screen. The signal pulsed rapidly, flashing red symbols across the broken glass. Alara's breath caught. "They know. They are tracking us now." The ground trembled as the fortress shifted, lights turning brighter, alarm-like pulses spreading through the valley. From the shadows, alien hunters turned their glowing eyes toward the ridge. Kael pulled Alara down, his rifle ready, his voice sharp. "They have seen us." Alara's heart raced, fear and fury mixing. "Then we cannot run. Not anymore." Kael looked at her, his face scarred but his eyes burning with fire. "No, we fight, but we fight smart." The forest shook as more hunters poured out of the fortress, their weapons glowing, their voices hissing like thunder. Kael fired first, the blast echoing across the valley, striking the nearest hunter. The aliens roared, their voices uniting into one sound, a wave of fury rushing up the ridge. Alara scrambled beside him, her scanner recording every symbol, every pulse, her mind racing. She whispered, "If I can decode this, if I can break their code, I might disable the cages." Kael gritted his teeth, firing again. "Then do it. I will buy you time." The ridge shook under the force of alien blasts, rocks splintering, roots burning. Kael fought like a storm, his rifle blazing, his blade flashing. Each shot tore through the night, each strike cut down another enemy. But the hunters did not stop. More and more poured from the fortress. endless shadows with endless fury. Alara's fingers flew across the scanner. Her voice shaking but steady. Almost. Suddenly the scanner lit up, a stream of symbols flashing across the broken screen. Alara gasped, "I have it! The code is linked if I push this frequency." Her words cut off as a massive shadow rose from the fortress. Kale turned, his eyes widening. From the center cage, a creature stepped out, towering above the others. Its body covered in jagged armor, its eyes burning red like fire. It was no scout, no hunter, but a commander, the one who ruled this place. The ground shook under its steps. Its voice roared like thunder across the valley. The hunters bowed their heads, their weapons raised. Alara froze, terror flooding her chest. "Kale, what is that?" Kale's face was grim, his voice low. "The reason I never came near this place, the reason I stayed hidden, the one I feared would rise." Alara's throat tightened, her hands shaking around the scanner. "Then we cannot win." Kale's eyes burned, his voice sharp. "Not yet, but we can fight, and we can make them bleed." The fortress roared with power. The commander raised its weapon. Alara clutched her scanner. Kale raised his rifle. The night was about to explode into war, and as the first blast lit the sky, Alara whispered through her fear, "This is not the end. This is the beginning."